gift card into my stocking, which had been hung by the fireplace with care. Kind of got lost down in the toe. But eventually, with some prompting from her, "Are you sure there's nothing else in your stocking?" I dug it out. It was a gift card for a pedicure at her favorite salon. Now, I had never had a pedicure. I never wanted a pedicure. I was never going to get a pedicure. I still have no idea why she thought I needed a pedicure. And I abjectly refused to get one. Now, I realize people get pedicures all the time. And if a spa day is your thing, that's great. But I could think of few things less relaxing than a stranger touching my feet. Rosalie, my mother-in-law, and Brenna, however, kept pushing me to get out of my comfort zone in order to get some comfort. And so the day before the gift card expired, I went with great trepidation to Nail Flare in Hingham, Massachusetts. Before getting out of the car, I furtively glanced around to make sure I didn't recognize anyone on the street. And of course, when I opened the door to the salon, I walked straight into a parishioner who was there to get her nails done. Now, just to cut to the chase, the whole experience was amazing. The oils, the foot massage, the warm towels, the whole thing. I've never gotten another one, and I probably never will, but it was indeed glorious. Proving once again that a mother-in-law always knows best. I mention this in the context of our gospel passage this morning because we'll be hearing a lot about feet in the next couple of weeks. Today we hear the story of Jesus having his feet lavishly anointed by Mary over at his friend Lazarus' house, the same friend he had just raised from the dead. And then during Holy Week on Maundy Thursday, we'll hear about Jesus washing the disciples' feet at the Last Supper. These are not unrelated acts. There's a through line from Mary's loving act of devotion to Jesus' teaching the disciples to love one another as he loved them. And what looms over both events is the cross. Mary anoints Jesus' feet on the eve of his triumphal entry into the great city of Jerusalem. Jesus washes the disciples' feet on the eve of his crucifixion. But in many ways, even at the Last Supper, the disciples are still in denial about what's about to go down. All the signs are there, but they're still clinging to the idea that Jesus will emerge triumphant in an earthly sense, that he will overthrow the powerful authorities seeking to do him harm and usher in a new worldly kingdom. They've read the prophecies. They've seen his miracles firsthand. They just experienced the adulation of the crowds waving palms as he entered into Jerusalem. Jesus' betrayal and arrest are imminent. We can certainly see that as we stand on this side of the resurrection. But they remain blind to the reality of what is to come. Mary, however, Mary knows. She understands what's happening with a clarity the other disciples are unwilling or unable to see. She acknowledges the impending death that everyone else is denying. She pre-anoints Jesus' body for burial. And this is key. Because this is not merely expensive perfume per se, but an oil used for embalming. The Greek word translated as perfume is muron, which is, wait for it, myrrh. Embalming fluid may have been an odd baby gift from the Magi, but it foreshadowed this moment. It pointed to Jesus' death. Mary knows what's coming, and so she inverts the order of the ancient burial customs. The traditional ritual was to anoint a dead body with spices and perfume, with myrrh if it was available, after death and before the burial. Not to anoint a living body before death. Yes, Mary knew. And so in this loving act, Mary is preparing her friend and her Lord for his very own death. Her devotion and love for Jesus are abundantly and extravagantly poured out upon him. Again, Mary sees with a clarity what others do not. She gets the gospel. She understands that what Jesus brings into the world is love, and that the world will reject this love. She washes and anoints Jesus' feet even before Jesus bids the disciples to wash one another's feet. Mary gets the gospel. And into this moment steps Judas Iscariot, railing against the waste of it all and pointing out that the valuable oil could have been sold and the money given to the poor. Now, John quickly characterizes Judas as a thief, questioning his motivations here. But Judas does have a point. The problem is that abundance is not a zero-sum game. There's a natural creative tension between loving and serving. And so a church could either hoard all of its resources to spend lavishly and exclusively on splendid worship, or a church could sell its buildings and everything inside of it and give the money to the poor. You could make arguments for both. But Jesus invites us to both love and serve, to worship and to care for the least of these among us. And Judas, even in his self-serving comment, fails to understand this. But Judas's biggest betrayal is not actually that he will give Jesus up to the authorities and get him arrested. That was going to happen one way or another. The biggest betrayal is Judas's rejection of Jesus' love. Remember, Jesus also will wash Judas's feet. Judas is loved by Jesus, and Judas does not accept it. He turns his back on God's love. More on that in the next couple of weeks. But this is the great contrast happening in Lazarus' home. Mary welcomes Jesus' love, and Judas turns his back upon it. He walks away from it. The challenge for us on this day is, how will we be more like Mary and less like Judas? How will we lavish our love and attention, our time and our generosity on our Lord, and not walk away from and minimize our love for him? Well, I would argue that it all begins with worship. When we worship the Lord either here in the beauty of holiness or in our daily devotions, whatever they may look like, we are lavishing our love on Jesus. We are following Mary's example of loving devotion. And you know what? Mary didn't care that some people thought she was wasting her time or her money on Jesus. Some people in your own life probably think you're wasting your time by going to church, or wasting your money by supporting all the ministry that happens around here. But like Mary, we can proclaim a bold faith simply by showing up here week after week after week, listening to the words of Jesus, lifting up our voices in prayer and song, sharing the Eucharist together, and prioritizing Christ even when, especially when, it all feels so countercultural. Because when we do that, we can, to finish up with one more reference to feet, channel the words of the prophet Isaiah, who proclaims, "How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of the messengers who announces peace, brings good news, who announces salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns." That's a tall order. But Mary shows us the way to taking that first step towards loving Jesus with all our heart and with all our soul and with all our mind and with all our strength.